Chosen one, stop scrolling. The stillness you just felt wasn't random, and it wasn't curiosity, it was recognition. Before your mind could question it, your body already knew this was about you. This is not motivation, not inspiration, not entertainment. This video carries God's message, and it reached you because your spiritual awakening has brought you to the exact moment where truth can finally land. What you're about to hear explains why your life has felt heavier, quieter, and more serious, and why ignoring this moment is no longer an option. You did not find this video, it found you. Not because you searched, but because awareness made you reachable. When awakening matures, truth doesn't shout, it arrives with weight. That weight you feel right now is not emotion. It is divine alignment. This video reveals why you were called, what this moment is preparing you for, and why the timing is critical. Stay with this until the end, because once this truth is fully revealed, you will understand why your life cannot return to what it was, and why your light is needed now more than ever. I am not speaking to everyone. This message does not belong to the crowd. It belongs to the chosen ones who have felt the shift in their life long before they could explain it. Those who sensed that something was changing, not outside first, but inside. Those who noticed that old distractions stopped working, that shallow conversations became exhausting, that silence began to feel more honest than noise. These are not personality changes. These are symptoms of awakening, and awakening is what makes a soul able to hear a divine message when it arrives. Understand this clearly: when God speaks to the chosen, the body recognizes it before the mind agrees. That is why your breath slowed. That is why your chest felt heavy but calm. The mind argues because it protects what is familiar. The soul recognizes because it remembers truth. You are not imagining this moment. You are responding to it, and response is different from belief. Belief is optional. Response is instinctual. This is God's final warning, not in the sense of fear or punishment, but in the sense of direction. Warnings are given to those who can still change course. Guidance is offered only to those capable of carrying it. This message is not about the end of the world. It is about the end of unconscious living. It is about a closing window where awareness either steps forward or stays dormant. And if you are hearing this, it is because staying dormant is no longer an option for you. There is a reason your life has not allowed you to fully disappear into distraction. A reason you kept getting interrupted by moments of loss, redirection, or forced stillness. A reason comfort never lasted as long as you hoped. God was not punishing you. God was keeping you reachable. Every interruption was a course correction. Every discomfort was an invitation to wake up. Every quiet moment was training your nervous system to recognize truth when it finally arrived in full clarity. This message is that clarity, and clarity does not beg for attention. It simply stands present and waits to be acknowledged. That is why this feels serious, not dramatic. Seriousness is the language of responsibility, and responsibility is the mark of the chosen one. You were not called because you are better than others. You were called because you are willing to see when others look away, willing to feel when others numb, willing to stop pretending when pretending becomes unbearable. If you feel aligned with what is being spoken, not excited but steady, comment 777 now. Not as a trend, as a confirmation that your awareness is present and listening. Let me say this plainly, so there is no confusion. This is a message from God. You are not misinterpreting the weight you feel. You are not reading too much into it. The war is real, but it is not a war of weapons or borders. It is a war for attention, for consciousness, for where awareness is placed. Noise is the battlefield. Distraction is the weapon, and unconsciousness is the prize. That is why awareness itself has become dangerous. That is why your light matters. Your light is not loud. It does not need to prove itself. Light simply reveals, and revelation disrupts systems built on sleep. That is why chosen ones feel pressure before purpose. Why awakening feels isolating before it feels empowering. Why truth arrives heavy before it feels freeing. This is not weakness. This is preparation. Circle back to the beginning of this moment. You paused. You felt the stillness. You recognized something before you understood it. That is how divine messages arrive, not through persuasion, but through remembrance. You were called because something in you is needed. Needed not for attention, not for status, but for presence, for integrity, for truth carried quietly into spaces that forgot what truth feels like. This is not the moment to rush. It is the moment to stand grounded, to stop doubting what you already know, to stop waiting for permission to be who awareness has been shaping you to become. This message did not come to scare you. It came to steady you, to remind you that you are not late, not lost, not broken. You are early, you are aware, and you are responsible. If this touched your soul, if something inside you leaned forward instead of pulling away, comment 111, because you know it now without needing proof. You were called. Why God's final warning is coming now. Return to the beginning of this message and anchor yourself again in the truth. This is God's message. Not symbolism, not exaggeration, not something your mind invented because you wanted meaning. You are not imagining the seriousness you feel. You were called because timing matters, and timing has nothing to do with dates written on calendars. Timing has everything to do with cycles of awareness. History does not move in straight lines. Consciousness moves in waves. Every era rises, expands, dulls, and eventually collapses into repetition. When awareness grows, systems strain. When truth surfaces, illusions weaken. And before every major shift in human consciousness, God's chosen are warned. Not to panic them, but to prepare them. God's final warning has always arrived before transitions, not after them, because awareness is only useful when it comes early enough to act. What is happening now is not the end of the world, it is the end of an era where unconscious living was tolerated, rewarded, and normalized. An era where distraction replaced depth, noise replaced wisdom, and speed replaced truth. The divine warning before 2026 is not about destruction. It is about closure. Closure of cycles that can no longer sustain awareness. Closure of identities built on sleep. Closure of lives lived on autopilot. Chosen one, understand this clearly. Warnings are not punishments. Punishment comes after ignorance. Warning comes before consequence. And God does not warn everyone. God warns those who are capable of hearing without collapsing into fear. That is why this message feels steady rather than dramatic, serious rather than frantic. You are being spoken to because you are stable enough to hold truth without distorting it. Every cycle of history has this moment, a quiet moment before acceleration, a narrowing of time where clarity becomes unavoidable. People sense it as restlessness, unease, or a feeling that something old is dissolving, but something new has not fully arrived. That feeling is not anxiety, it is awareness detecting transition, and chosen ones feel it first because their nervous systems are tuned to subtle shifts rather than surface noise. God's final warning comes now because awareness has reached a tipping point. Enough souls have awakened to make unconscious systems unstable. Lies require agreement to survive, Illusions require participation. When enough people stop participating internally, even if they say nothing externally, structures begin to weaken. That is when warnings are released. Not to stop the shift, but to guide those meant to carry light through it. A divine warning before 2026 does not mean countdowns or catastrophe. It means preparation windows. It means alignment opportunities. It means the final chance to release identities that cannot cross into the next cycle of consciousness. You are not being asked to escape the world. You are being asked to see it clearly, to stop living from reflex and start living from awareness, to choose presence over performance. This is why urgency is being felt without panic. Panic belongs to the unprepared. Urgency belongs to the aware. Urgency says, pay attention now, align now, let go now, because once the cycle turns fully, resistance becomes suffering. This message is arriving while choice is still fluid, while paths can still be redirected gently instead of forcefully. You were not chosen randomly. Chosen one is not a title of privilege, it is a description of function. Those who awaken early are tasked with stabilizing the field as others awaken later. Your role is not to convince or save. Your role is to remain clear, calm, grounded, awake. Light does not argue with darkness. It simply remains visible. Circle back again to the beginning of this truth. This is a message from God. You are not exaggerating the weight you feel. The war is real, but it is not fought with violence. It is fought with attention, with where consciousness is placed, with whether awareness is surrendered to noise or anchored in truth. And your light is necessary because it does not flicker when pressure increases. That is why this warning is coming now, because enough pressure has built that clarity must rise to meet it. Because awareness must become embodied, not theoretical. Because those who can see must choose whether they will stand present or retreat into comfort. God's message is not asking you to fear the future. It is asking you to prepare your inner posture for it. You are here because you can handle this truth without becoming rigid or lost. Because your awakening has matured beyond curiosity and entered responsibility. Because your presence itself stabilizes something unseen but real. This is not coincidence. This is alignment meeting, assignment. If this touched your soul, if something in you recognized the timing without needing explanation, comment 111. Because you know it now, quietly and clearly, you were called. How chosen ones receive warnings differently. Return again to the foundation, because clarity grows stronger when truth is repeated. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the patterns you have lived through, and you are not misreading the pressure you feel. You are called, and calling does not arrive the same way for everyone. That is why your experience has felt different, heavier, and harder to explain. Chosen ones do not receive warnings like ordinary intuition. Intuition is a whisper that helps with decisions. A divine calling is a disruption that rearranges a life. When God warns the chosen, it does not come as a single thought or moment. It comes as a pattern that refuses to stop repeating until it is understood. That is why your life kept interrupting itself. Jobs that stopped fitting, relationships that slowly drained instead of nourished, interests that once excited you but suddenly felt empty. These were not random changes, they were signals. For the chosen one, warning does not arrive as a voice saying what will happen. It arrives as an inner pressure saying who you can no longer be. That pressure is uncomfortable because identity resists change. Old versions fight to survive even when they are outdated. So confusion sets in. Not because you are lost, but because you are shedding skins faster than the mind can label them. Confusion is not failure. Confusion is transition without a map. Isolation is another signal many chosen ones misunderstand. You may have felt pulled away from groups, conversations, or social rhythms you once followed naturally. Not because you became antisocial, but because your awareness outgrew surface connection. Shallow living began to feel loud. Small talk felt heavy. Entertainment felt numbing instead of relaxing. This is not arrogance. It is sensitivity increasing. When awareness sharpens, noise becomes painful. Increased sensitivity is one of the clearest signs of divine calling. You feel environments more deeply. You sense emotional undercurrents others ignore. Crowds exhaust you. Silence restores you. Your nervous system has been rewired to detect truth, not stimulation. That is why forcing yourself back into old patterns feels draining. You are not weak. You are calibrated differently now. Many chosen ones mistake this phase for regression. They think something is wrong because motivation drops, certainty dissolves, and old confidence no longer fits. But what is actually happening is reorientation. Motivation based on ego fades so purpose can take its place. Certainty based on illusion dissolves, so clarity can form. Confidence based on approval weakens so integrity can stand on its own. Repeated disruptions are another way. Warnings arrive, plans collapse at the last minute. Paths close without explanation. You feel delayed while others move forward. This is not punishment. It is protection. When God warns the chosen, He often blocks doors that lead to misalignment, even if they look successful from the outside. Delay is often a form of guidance that saves you from carrying the wrong life into the next cycle. Pressure is also part of this calling, a quiet pressure to become more honest, more present, more aligned. Not with other people's expectations, but with your own inner truth. That pressure does not shout. It waits, and if ignored, it grows heavier, not to harm you, but to keep you from sleeping through your assignment. Here is the responsibility that comes with awareness. Once you recognize these signs, you cannot unsee them. Chosen ones are not given the luxury of permanent unconsciousness. That is why pretending feels harder for you than for others. That is why numbing yourself never worked for long. Responsibility is not about saving the world. It is about refusing to abandon your awareness once it has awakened. Circle back once more to the beginning of this message. This is a message from God. You are not overthinking your life. The war is real, and it is subtle. It is a war between awareness and distraction, between truth and comfort. And your light is necessary not because you are perfect, but because you are willing to stay awake when it would be easier to sleep. You were never meant to fit neatly into a system built on unconscious repetition. You were meant to stand slightly apart, seeing clearly, holding steady, and embodying what alignment looks like without preaching it. That is how chosen ones carry warnings. Not through fear, but through presence. If this touched your soul, if these words felt like someone finally naming what you have lived rather than what you were told, comment 111. Because you know it now without needing proof. You were called. The separation that happens before the shift, return again to the beginning, because grounding yourself in truth is part of staying steady through separation. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the distance you feel, and you are not failing because old connections no longer fit. You were called, and before every divine shift, separation always comes first. Separation is one of the most misunderstood phases of awakening. Many chosen ones believe something has gone wrong when they begin to feel disconnected from people, systems, ambitions, or desires that once defined them. But separation is not rejection. It is refinement. It is the process by which awareness is cleared of noise, so truth can be heard without distortion. Before every major transition in consciousness, God removes distractions quietly rather than dramatically, rarely all at once. Slowly, patiently, almost invisibly. You may notice that conversations feel repetitive, that environments you once tolerated now feel heavy, that goals you chased for years suddenly feel hollow. This is not loss of motivation, it is clarity dissolving false importance. God's chosen are not separated because they are better. They are separated because they are needed elsewhere internally. First, awareness cannot deepen in crowded mental spaces. Truth cannot be heard when the nervous system is overloaded. So life begins to simplify itself around you. Invitations stop coming. Certain relationships fade without conflict. Old ambitions lose emotional charge. What remains is quiet. And quiet is where instruction becomes audible. As God's final warning approaches, this separation often intensifies, not to isolate you permanently, but to prepare you temporarily. Preparation requires focus. Focus requires space. Space requires letting go. This is why the separation feels uncomfortable. You are being pulled away from familiar anchors before new ones fully form. That in-between state feels lonely, but it is sacred. Many chosen ones struggle here because they mistake separation for abandonment. They wonder why God would remove comfort just as awareness increases. But comfort is not always support. Sometimes comfort is what keeps a soul asleep, and God does not awaken the chosen to then let them drift back into unconscious ease. This separation also applies to systems. You may feel disillusioned with structures you once trusted unquestioningly, institutions, belief systems, cultural scripts that once felt solid now feel thin. This is not rebellion, it is discernment. As awareness grows, alignment becomes non-negotiable. You can no longer pretend something is true just because it is familiar or socially rewarded. Old desires also fall away during this phase. Desires rooted in approval, status, or distraction lose their grip. This can feel confusing because desire once drove your sense of direction. When it fades, emptiness appears. But that emptiness is not lack. It is space being created for a deeper calling to emerge. Understand this clearly. Separation is not punishment. It is not exile. It is not a sign that you failed to belong. It is evidence that you are being repositioned. God's chosen are never removed without reason. They are moved so they can see more clearly, stand more steadily, and carry light without interference. This is why the separation feels purposeful rather than chaotic. Even in loneliness, there is a strange sense of order. Even in grief, there is clarity. Even in stillness, there is pressure to become more honest, more present, more aligned. That pressure is guidance, not condemnation. This phase requires maturity. It asks you not to chase replacement distractions just to fill silence. It asks you not to rush back into old patterns out of fear. It asks you to trust that what is falling away is making room for something that cannot coexist with noise. Responsibility during separation is not action, it is restraint. Circle back again to the beginning of this message. This is a message from God. You are not becoming disconnected because you are broken. The war is real, and it is subtle. It is a war between depth and distraction, between awareness and sedation. And your light is necessary because it can remain steady and quiet without needing validation. This separation does not make you superior. It gives you an assignment to remain awake when others are still numbing themselves. An assignment to embody clarity instead of chasing comfort. an assignment to become a stable point of presence as the world grows louder and more chaotic. You were not meant to disappear. You were meant to prepare, and preparation often looks like standing alone long enough to remember who you are without reflection from others. If this touched your soul, if you felt seen rather than flattered, comment 111, because you know it now, deeply and without doubt, you were called. What God is asking you to release before 2026? Return again to the beginning, because release only makes sense when truth is remembered. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the inner pressure to let go. You were called, and calling always asks something of the one who receives it. Awareness without release becomes burden. Awareness with release becomes clarity. What God is asking you to release before 2026 is not external behavior first. It is internal attachment. External change follows inner honesty, not the other way around. The first thing being asked of you is fear. Not surface fear, but the quiet fear that has shaped your choices for years. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of disappointing others. Fear of stepping fully into who you know you are without permission or approval. That fear once protected you. Now it confines you. False identity is another thing being loosened from your life. The version of you that learned how to survive instead of how to align. The identity built to fit into expectations, roles, or systems that rewarded obedience over truth. That identity worked when unconsciousness was normal. It cannot carry you into the next cycle of awareness. God is not asking you to destroy yourself. God is asking you to stop pretending. People-pleasing is one of the most exhausting forms of spiritual delay. It looks kind, it feels responsible, but at its core, it is avoidance. Avoidance of conflict, avoidance of rejection, avoidance of standing alone. Chosen ones are often skilled at people-pleasing because sensitivity makes them aware of others' emotions. But sensitivity without boundaries becomes self-erasure. God's message is not asking you to become harsh. It is asking you to become honest. Another thing being asked to release is spiritual procrastination. Waiting for the perfect moment. Waiting to feel ready. Waiting for clarity before taking responsibility. Readiness does not come before obedience. It comes after it. Many chosen ones delay their alignment because they believe they must understand everything before acting. But understanding grows through movement, not hesitation. Waiting for permission is closely tied to this. Permission from family, from culture, from authority, from timing that feels safe. But the truth is this: if you were the kind of soul who needed permission, you would not be here hearing this message. Chosen ones are not called when it is convenient. They are called when it is necessary. Ignoring God's message does not result in immediate punishment. It results in repetition. The same lessons showing up in different forms. The same discomfort resurfacing in new environments. The same inner tension following you no matter how much you change the outside. That repetition is not cruelty. It is mercy. Mercy that refuses to let you drift too far from yourself. Obedience, on the other hand, brings clarity. Not instant ease, but clarity. A steadiness that replaces anxiety. A sense of rightness even when the path is unfamiliar. Obedience is not about blind submission. It is about alignment. About choosing truth over comfort. Presence over performance, integrity over approval. This release is not dramatic. It does not require announcements or radical displays. Most of it happens quietly, internally, when no one is watching. When you stop explaining yourself unnecessarily. When you stop saying yes out of fear. When you stop betraying your own awareness to keep peace that costs you clarity. Be honest with yourself here, without guilt. Guilt belongs to the ego. Honesty belongs to awareness. God is not shaming you for what you held on to when you did not know better. God is inviting you to release what you now recognize as heavy beliefs, heavy roles, heavy compromises. This is where responsibility becomes real. Awareness without action becomes anxiety. Action without awareness becomes chaos. You are being asked to bring the two together, to let go of what dulls your light so your presence can sharpen, because your light is not meant to flicker in indecision. It is meant to stand steady. Circle back once more to the beginning of this truth. This is a message from God. You are not making this up. The war is real, and it is fought internally before it is ever seen externally. It is a war between fear and trust, between delay and alignment. And your light is necessary because it shows what grounded awareness looks like in real life. Release does not mean loss. It means space. Space for truth to move through you without resistance. Space for clarity to replace confusion. Space for purpose to emerge without force. If this touched your soul, if something in you recognized exactly what you have been holding on to, comment 111. Because you know it now, not emotionally, but clearly. You were called. The responsibility of carrying a divine message. Return again to the beginning and anchor yourself in what you already know. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the weight that comes with hearing it. You were called, and calling is never given for comfort. It is given for responsibility. The moment you recognize a divine message, you stop being only a receiver and become a steward. God's chosen are not selected because they are the strongest, loudest, or most confident. They are selected because they are willing to carry truth without needing applause. A divine calling and chosen one experience does not elevate someone above others. It grounds them deeper into accountability. You are entrusted with awareness because you can hold it without abusing it. To carry God's message does not mean preaching, persuading, or announcing yourself as chosen. Most divine messages are carried quietly. They are carried in how you speak when it would be easier to lie, in how you remain present when others disconnect, in how you choose integrity when shortcuts are available. This is how God's chosen serve without spectacle. Responsibility shows up in small daily moments. When you refuse to participate in cruelty disguised as humor. When you do not reward dishonesty even if it benefits you. When you pause instead of reacting. When you speak truth calmly instead of performing outrage. Carrying a divine message is less about what you say and more about what you refuse to compromise. Understand this clearly. Silence is also a choice. Inaction is also a message. When awareness shows you something is wrong, and you look away to stay comfortable, that is a decision. God's message does not demand perfection, but it does demand honesty. You are not expected to fix the world. You are expected not to betray what you can see. Many chosen ones struggle with this responsibility because they mistake it for pressure to save others. That is not your role. Your role is embodiment. To live in a way that makes truth tangible, to be so grounded in awareness that your presence itself disrupts unconsciousness without force. Light does not chase darkness. It simply remains visible. This responsibility can feel heavy because it removes excuses. You can no longer say you did not know. You can no longer pretend ignorance when awareness has already opened your eyes. That does not mean you must be serious or rigid all the time. It means your choices carry weight, even when they appear ordinary. God's chosen often feel this responsibility as a quiet internal standard that does not go away. A sense that cutting corners no longer feels neutral, that numbing yourself feels wrong instead of relaxing, that betraying your truth costs more than external consequences ever could. This is not anxiety. This is conscience awakening into clarity. Carrying a divine message also means knowing when to speak and when to remain still. Not every truth needs to be delivered. Not every situation requires your voice. Discernment is part of responsibility. Wisdom knows timing. Ego demands expression. God's message moves through patience, not urgency. This is where maturity becomes essential. You are not asked to be perfect. You are asked to be present, to notice when you are avoiding alignment out of fear, to notice when you are shrinking to fit environments that require unconsciousness, to notice when silence becomes self-protection instead of wisdom. Responsibility also means accepting that you may be misunderstood, that clarity may cost you belonging in certain spaces, that integrity may close doors that compromise would keep open. God's chosen are not promised comfort. They are promised purpose. And purpose often feels lonely before it feels meaningful. Circle back again to the beginning of this message. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the seriousness that has entered your life. The war is real, and it is subtle. It is fought in moments where awareness asks you to choose between ease and truth. And your light is necessary because it shows that living awake is possible without becoming bitter or hardened. You were not called to impress. You were called to carry clarity into confusion, to carry steadiness into chaos, to carry truth without violence. That is responsibility. That is stewardship. That is the quiet strength of God's chosen. If this touched your soul, if you felt the weight of responsibility not as fear but as readiness, comment 111, because you know it now, clearly and calmly. You were called. What happens if this warning is ignored? Return once more to the beginning and steady yourself in truth. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the seriousness of this moment, and you were not mistaken to feel the weight of it. You were called because awareness reached you in time. And time, when it comes to awakening, is not infinite. Ignoring God's final warning does not bring lightning or punishment. God does not operate through threats. What follows ignorance is something quieter and far more exhausting: stagnation. Life continues to move, but you do not move with it. The same lessons repeat in different forms. The same conflicts reappear with new faces. The same inner questions return, unanswered, year after year. When a divine message is ignored, clarity begins to blur. Not all at once, but gradually. What once felt obvious becomes confusing. What once felt aligned begins to feel dull. Motivation fades, not because you are lazy, but because purpose has been postponed too long. The soul grows tired of being overruled. Confusion is one of the first consequences. Not confusion about everything, but confusion about yourself. You forget what matters. You lose touch with your inner compass. Decisions become heavier instead of clearer. You begin to seek certainty outside yourself because the inner signal has been muted. This is not failure. It is what happens when awareness is resisted instead of integrated. Another consequence is repetition. Patterns you thought you escaped return with stronger intensity. Relationships repeat the same wounds. Work environments mirror the same frustrations. Emotional triggers surface again and again. Life does this not to punish, but to teach. Lessons unlearned must be retaught. Invitations declined must be reissued until the window closes. Loss of clarity does not mean loss of intelligence or capability. It means loss of alignment. You can be successful and still feel misplaced. You can be busy and still feel empty. You can be surrounded and still feel disconnected. This is the quiet cost of ignoring what you already know to be true. The most subtle consequence is numbness. Not depression, not despair, but a dulling of sensitivity. You stop feeling the sharp edges of truth because they were avoided too long. You become functional but not fulfilled, capable but not connected. This is not peace. It is adaptation to misalignment. Now understand the contrast. Responding to God's message does not guarantee an easy life. It brings peace of a different kind. Not comfort, but coherence. Life begins to make sense again, even when it is challenging. Choices become clearer. Boundaries strengthen. You feel grounded instead of scattered. Alignment replaces anxiety. Responding does not mean everything works out instantly. It means you stop fighting yourself. It means energy previously spent on avoidance becomes available for purpose. It means the inner noise quiets because you are no longer resisting what you already know. God's final warning is not a threat. It is an invitation. An invitation to step into alignment while the path is still open. But invitations are not permanent. Not because God withdraws love, but because cycles move forward. Opportunities that require awareness cannot wait forever for readiness that refuses to arrive. When the cycle turns, resistance becomes friction. What could have been a gentle shift becomes a forced one. What could have been a conscious release becomes a loss. This is why warnings are given early. This is why you are hearing this now. The war is real, but it is internal. It is a war between awareness and avoidance, between truth and comfort. Ignoring the warning does not make the war stop. It only removes your advantage in it. Awareness is your shield. Presence is your ground. Circle back again to the beginning of this truth. This is a message from God. You were not chosen to be frightened into action. You were chosen because you are capable of responding with clarity. Your light is necessary not to save others, but to remain visible when many will choose numbness instead. This moment is not asking you to panic. It is asking you to decide, to choose awareness over delay, alignment over repetition, presence over avoidance. You are not late. You are exactly on time. If you respond, if this touched your soul, if something in you felt the quiet seriousness of choice without fear, comment 111, because you know it now with calm certainty. You were called. Final confirmation for the chosen ones. Return to the beginning one last time and let the truth settle without resistance. This is a message from God. You are not imagining why you are here, and you did not arrive by accident. You were called because recognition happened in you, not excitement. Excitement fades. Recognition roots. And what roots does not need to be chased or proven. If you felt calm instead of thrilled, steady instead of hyped, serious instead of entertained, that is confirmation. Spiritual awakening matures when it no longer seeks sensation. Early awakening looks for signs. Mature awakening recognizes them. You are not here to be convinced. You are here because something in you already knew, that knowing is quiet, grounded, and unshakable. This message was never about predicting events or creating urgency. It was about clarity, about seeing the moment you are living in without distortion, about understanding that cycles are closing and new responsibilities are forming. The choice placed before you is simple, though not easy. Awareness or avoidance, alignment or repetition, presence or distraction. Every path forward branches from this choice. You have already been preparing for this moment, even if you did not have language for it. The separation you endured, the discomfort that refused to leave, the inner pressure to be honest when dishonesty would have been easier. These were not obstacles, they were training. They refined your attention, strengthened your discernment, and steadied your nervous system so truth could land without overwhelming you. Spiritual awakening reaching maturity does not feel mystical. It feels practical. You become less impressed by noise and more committed to clarity. You stop waiting for permission and start taking responsibility. You stop asking whether you are called and start asking how you will carry what you have been given. This is not ascension. This is embodiment. You are not being asked to rush. You are being asked to resolve. Resolve is different from urgency. Urgency scatters. Resolve grounds. Resolve says, I will live awake even when it is inconvenient. I will choose integrity even when no one is watching. I will remain present even when distraction is easier. That is how light stays light without burning out. This final confirmation is not for everyone. It is for those who stayed with the message, not because it flattered them, but because it named them. Those who felt seen rather than entertained. Those who recognized themselves in the quiet weight of responsibility rather than in promises of reward. If you feel aligned with this moment, if your body feels steady and your mind feels clear, comment 777 now, not as belief, but as readiness. Readiness to live what you already understand. Understand this deeply. You are not alone in this calling, even when the path feels solitary. Chosen ones often walk ahead, not apart. Ahead so others can find their footing when awareness reaches them later. Your role is not to drag anyone forward. It is to remain visible, grounded, and awake. The war is real, but it is subtle. It is not fought with force. It is fought with attention, with whether consciousness is placed on truth or surrendered to noise, with whether you live deliberately or drift by default. And your light is necessary because it demonstrates that awareness can be lived, not just discussed. Do not mistake this confirmation for completion. Awakening does not end. It stabilizes, it deepens, it integrates into daily life through choices that seem small but carry weight. How you speak, what you tolerate, where you place your time, what you refuse to numb. This is where spirituality becomes real. Circle back to the beginning and hear it clearly now, without doubt. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the call. You were chosen because you can be trusted with clarity, trusted to remain calm when others panic, trusted to hold truth without weaponizing it, trusted to stand present without superiority. There is nothing more you need to wait for. No final sign, no perfect moment. Awareness has already arrived. Resolve is what follows. Stand grounded. Stay awake. Carry your light quietly and consistently. That is how cycles change. If this touched your soul, if something in you feels complete rather than stirred up, comment 111. Because you know it now without emotion or doubt. You were called.